made sure that was the most. I didn't find anything. It was like an hour after. I guess we should have been watching we need to be snapping on one answer. One auto is watching. Where are you guys?
Are you running this?
No, we're not there.
Blocking your shot?
Oh, but you're going to block us. Sorry, but no worries.
This is for you.
Hey, we need this area 3 here. We could probably squeeze you in there with all that stuff.
Even if I set this up,
We can probably squeeze you in there.
anything.
Like, honestly, just like the winter. They only had 4 spotters, so well, no, we're supposed to. You're at the beach. I would keep noticing.
Well, I don't think you understand. I'm fiercely independent. They say what?
They did it.
They let you bring vape pens in.
But you can't take it. We gotta go with the stage. So I took like automatically because they didn't even get you grab it.
That was your mistake. They let people keep their like their vape pens and like jewels. No, chocolate is like we drop a lot of chalk right here.
You want, I'll just probably stay over here.
Okay. Well, we need this area 3.
No, yeah.
What are we at?
Everyone else is having seen you.
Even better.
Like see him and I'm right.
Yeah, that'd be a better free shot than through a weird archway with lightning.
The guy in the second hoodie, he made it from hell on that point. He was out there. He was in facing the parking lot. The one on the far left. This guy is he does do it. That's a real deal.
He's got like 17 FPS.
Let me pull out my card, my ticket.
I tell you. John is a high school move on. Yeah, like how he's always been against everything. Like we were like he was against us coming in 1492, like just like he was against the mainland, like he was like he was like volunteer, like everyone else. Yeah, she was amazing. It was funny. No, I didn't like that. That was
And then it was just like, oh, come on, guys. And she was like,
Okay, the worst part about this thing, the second party and that's representing probably supported Hillary Clinton in the 2016 election.
yeah, and then she'll be supporting some other candidate.
And she'll be on that stage. Like, I was like, I do think by the wall. We need to make that. And the songs are
Good afternoon, Boone County. Thank you all so much for being here. This is an absolutely amazing crowd, and we really appreciate you guys taking time on your Saturday afternoon to come out and hear the next President of the United States. My name is Heidi. I am a United States Navy veteran, and I am also the Yang Gang Envoy, because we have cool titles like that in the Yang campaign. So how many of you have heard of Andrew as the guy that wants to give everybody $1,000 a month? That's fair. That's what he's known for, and it's what he wants to do. But to me, his most important contribution is bringing into public discourse the idea that economic value and human value are not the same. When I won every writing contest in my home state of Louisiana, I was published by the time I was 12, believe it or not. But everybody around me told me, do something that makes money. Do something that's useful. Do something that has economic value. So I spent 15 years in tech, doing something that I did not love, while over time, watching tech, the industry we're all supposed to go into, I watched the jobs slowly get automated away, because tech is one of the easiest things to automate, believe it or not. I lost coworkers. I was told that I'd eventually have to live on a coast and work in a data center if I wanted to stay in the field. Last summer, my 16-year-old son told me he wanted to be a writer. And I'm not going to tell him not to do it. We've lost enough potential writers, artists, and musicians because we told them they had no economic value. But the reality is, who enjoys thinking about GDP on a lazy summer day? Nope. We're reading books. We're listening to music. We're going to museums. Iowa, our hands on February 3rd. And now, I would like to invite the Boone County Dem Vice Chair Penny Vossler to speak.
Only in Iowa do we get to hang out with presidential candidates, and I get to introduce someone. This is my first time doing this. If it as an opening act, if it goes well, I'll take it on the road. But you did not come here to see and hear me. You came to hear the man, the next president of the United States, Mr. Andrew Yang. Woo!
Yeah!
Hello, Boone. How are you? It's tremendous to be here. Oh my gosh, 2 days till voting.
Yeah!
And you all are among the most powerful and influential people in our country today. I know it doesn't feel like it, living your lives, doing your thing. Come check out the presidential candidates that come through at the local Mexican place. But Boone, I have done the math. Do you know how many Californian voters each of you is worth?
1,000.
1,000 each. That's right. So look around this room today. How many people are here with us? I'm going to give a Trumpian estimate. There are 800 people. The biggest Mexican restaurant anyone's ever seen. They're legitimately, I mean, I shouldn't even say a number because there's probably a fire code in this place. They're legitimately, let's call it 100 people plus here, which would be several football stadiums worth of Californians. That's the power we have assembled right here today to do something that the rest of, trying to get us to understand a challenge or problem that we've been wrestling with for the last several years as a country. And that by almost 10 points. If you turned on cable news at any point in the last several years, we've been offered a whole series of explanations as to why he won. I know you've seen them too, so go ahead and shout out one of the explanations that you've seen floating around the last several years.
Racism.
Systemic racism.
Racism.
Fear.
Russia.
Fear.
Fear.
Emails.
Emails. Hillary Rodham Clinton.
An ignored middle class.
Nationalism.
Voter
Revenge.
suppression.
Facebook. Media.
Okay.
Sexism.
Idiocy.
FBI. The Russians again. DNC again. Fox News and the media.
CNN.
400-pound guy on a bed.
I might have missed that. I was like, is she talking to our Chris Christie?
It's only 350.
So we've all been presented these explanations sort of mixed together into some kind of stew. But Boone, I'm a numbers guy, and the numbers tell a very clear and compelling story as to why Trump is our president today. We eliminated 4 million manufacturing jobs over the last number of years in this country. And where were those jobs primarily located? Michigan, Ohio,
Small town.
Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Missouri, and 40,000 right here in Iowa. Manufacturing jobs gone. I have been to those towns that lost those jobs, and when the plant closed, then the shopping district closed. Then people left, then the school, and that town has never recovered. I saw the same thing play out in Missouri, Ohio, Michigan, Pennsylvania, because I spent the last 7 years running a nonprofit that helped create thousands of jobs in those states. And unfortunately, what we did to those manufacturing jobs is now shifting to other parts of our economy. How many of you have noticed stores closing around where you live here in this part of Iowa? And why are those stores closing?
Amazon.
Amazon, that's right. 10 years ago, you might have said Walmart. Walmart was like a tank that came to town and started running over mom and pop retailers. Amazon's more like a spaceship, hovering over everything, sucking up $20 billion in business a year, closing 30% of your stores and malls. I was just in a mall the other day where the JCPenney just closed. And we all know these malls can go from cheery to spooky awfully quick. But here's the thing we might not realize. The most common job in the economy is retail clerk. The average retail clerk is a 39-year-old woman making between $8 and $12 an hour. When her store closes, what is her next job going to be? We're not quite sure. How much did Amazon pay in taxes last year? 0. That is your math, Boone. 20 billion out, 30% of your stores close, most common job starts to disappear, and you get 0 back. These are changes we can see and feel around us, but they're more pervasive than most of us know. When you all call the customer service line of a big company, and you get the bot or software on the other end, you do the same thing I do, which is you pound 000, say human, human, representative, human, 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 until you get someone on the line. Raise your hand if that's what you do. Oh yeah, we all do that because that software is terrible. We're all like, a person still works at this company somewhere, and I'm going to find that person. But in 2 or 3 short years, the software will sound like this. Hello, Andrew, how are you? What can I do for you? It'll be fast, seamless, efficient. What will that mean for the 2.5 million Americans who work at call centers right now making $10 to $14 an hour?
No more jobs.
How many of you know a truck driver here in Iowa? Most common job in 29 states. 3.5 million truckers. Average age 49, 94% men. My friends in California are working on trucks that can drive themselves. They tell me they're 98% of the way there. A robot truck just transported 20 tons of butter from California to Pennsylvania a month ago with no human intervention. Why did they choose butter for this maiden voyage? I have no idea. But if you Google robot butter truck, you can find the story. And at the end of the route was a giant stack of pancakes, as far as the eye can. I made up the pancakes. But everything else is real, Boone. The robot trucks are coming. What will they mean for the 3.5 million truck drivers in our communities, or the 7 million plus Americans who work at truck stops, motels, and diners that rely upon the truck stopping every day and the truckers getting out and having a meal? How many of you have been to Iowa 80 in Davenport? Yeah, it's got a mean buffet. Maybe not as mean as this one. I haven't tried this one yet. It's good here. How many, well, they say that 5,000 people stop at Iowa 80 every day right now. How many people will stop there if the trucks don't have drivers anymore? 2. That was very authoritative. She's like, me? Boone, we're going through the greatest economic and technological transformation in the history of our country. What experts are calling the 4th Industrial Revolution. Chances are you've never heard a politician even say the words 4th Industrial Revolution until just now. And I am barely a politician. I am an entrepreneur who started an organization that helped create thousands of jobs in the Midwest and South. I was honored several times by the Obama administration, so I got to bring my wife, Evelyn, to meet the president. My in-laws were very excited about me for about a week. But during this time, while I was getting awards and accolades, I had this sinking feeling that my work was like pouring water into a bathtub that had a giant hole ripped in the bottom. That the water level was getting worse, not better. And then Trump wins. I see the direct line up between the adoption of industrial automation in a voting area and the movement to Trump in that area. I see that these trends are only going to accelerate and pick up steam because the technology is getting smarter, more capable, faster, in ways that we are not. As human beings, we feel fortunate to stay just about the same. Like if I didn't in a day, that's a good day. Not our kids. I mean, our kids are getting smarter, but you know what I mean. To like full-on adulthood, you're like, if I could find my keys, that was pretty good. But that's not the tech. The tech is ramping up in unprecedented ways. I know causing people to feel pushed to the side. That was my mission when I went to Washington, D.C. in 2017. Trump wins in 2016. Look, we're going through this historic economic transformation. Immigrants are being scapegoated for problems they have nothing to do with. When you go to a factory in Michigan, you do not find wall-to-wall immigrants doing work. What do you find? Wall-to-wall robot arms and machines doing the work that people used to do. So I asked the folks in D.C., what do he said, go away. We have no idea. Those guys have DC hats on. It's impressive. He said we should study this further, and he said we should form a committee. Those were some of the most common answers I got. But the most common answer I got was something you've all heard, and it was this. We must educate and retrain all Americans for the jobs of the future. Raise your hand if you've heard that one in some form. Oh, we all have. But I'm the numbers guy, Boone. I looked at the studies. Do you all want to guess how effective the government-funded retraining programs were for the manufacturing workers who lost their jobs in the Midwest? Not. You know it's low because I'm anchoring you low. But you also know it's low because you have common sense and you know people. You know if you have hundreds of manufacturing workers who lose their jobs, they don't all march outside and say, I'm here for my coding retraining program. I'll be coding in no time. I mean, that's not human nature. The success rates were between 0 and 15%. Almost half of the manufacturing workers who lost their jobs in the Midwest left the workforce and did not work again. Of that group, almost half filed for disability. We then saw surges in suicides and drug over communities to the point where America's life expectancy declined for 3 years in a row. You know the last time a Great Depression's also a great guess. It's a little bit before the Depression. It's the Spanish flu of 90. a global pandemic that killed millions 100 years ago in a developed country. Ordinarily, it just goes up because you're getting richer, stronger, healthier. But here in the US, it went down and then down and then down again. When I said this to the folks in DC, one person said something that brought me here to you all in Boone today. He said, Andrew, you're in the wrong town. No one here in DC will do anything about this. Fundamentally, this is a town of followers, not leaders. And the only way we would do something about it is to create a wave in other parts of the country and bring that wave crashing down on our heads. And I said, challenge accepted. And Boone, I don't know if you can feel it, but the wave is this Monday. The wave is our chance to rewrite the rules of this economy to start working for us and our people and not just these big companies that have been running our government for far too long. We raised $16.5 million last quarter in increments of only $35 each. So my fans are almost as cheap as birthdays. But there was no corporate PAC money in there, Boone. This is all just ordinary Americans trying to take back our government to work. Because right now we have corporate profits going up and life expectancy trending down. Which do you listen to? They can't see that. They just follow the money. Washington, D.C. today is the richest city in our country. Think about that for a second. Produce. No. And yet business is awfully good. Donald Trump wanted to swamp Boone. I want to do something a little bit different. I want to distribute the support. Why would you employ hundreds of thousands of government workers in the most expensive city in your country? Why wouldn't you among normal Americans and not in a DC bubble just talking to each other? I'm for term limits for members of Congress. And then come home. It should not be to go there and say, let me stay, let me stay. I love it here, I love it here. So Boone, this is how we're gonna get it done. And say, hey, we should have 12-year term limits, both houses. Becomes much more dynamic and responsive. So let's pass this, but current lawmakers are exempt. Do you think they'll pass that?
Sure.
Oh yeah, they'll pass that the next day. They'll say, we do this for the American people. Because it doesn't affect them. It just affects whoever comes after them. They'll walk around being like, oh, look at this. Like, I can still stay forever. But then eventually they'll lose, they'll get phased out, and you'll have a legislature that actually is much more dynamic and responsive. The biggest problem is that corporate interests and lobbyist cash have taken over the government. So how do you break that stranglehold? You need to overturn Citizens United, but the fact is corporate money ran that town before Citizens United. So what's the real fix? Only 5% of Americans donate to political candidates or campaigns right now. So if you're in that 5%, pat yourself on the back, because that's a very high level of engagement. So how do you get that percentage up and wash out the lobbyist cash? My plan is to get... He said everybody, wash out the lobbyist cash by a factor of 5 to 1. Because think about it, if you get 10,000 Americans to give you their 100 democracy dollars, that's $1 million. And then if the lobbyist comes to you and says, hey, it's 70,000 for you, you're like, I do not want your money, because they're going to see that and they're not going to like it. And so I should just go to people, because this way the people and the money are in the same place. Instead, right now, the people are over here and the money's over here. And right now, in America, if the money's over here and the people are over here, who wins?
The money.
The money. That's what we have to change, Boone. We have to make it so that our government's actually responding to us and not the big companies. Really, at this point in America, if your first name is Big and your last name is Company, then our government has like a concierge service for you.
Yeah.
But if your name is anything else, they can barely hear you. This is our... More important than getting our government under control. And you're like, what could be more important than that? Because that stuff's pretty core. But I think you'll agree More important than that is making this economy actually start working for you and your families. Because right now, you're getting sucked dry. We talked about this Amazon shutting 30% of your stores, and it just goes on and on from there. Raise your hand if you're a parent. Yeah, me too. If you're a parent, you've had this sinking feeling sometime in the not so distant past that our kids are inheriting a future that is less bright, less secure. American dream. That's what brought my family here. That's what we aspire to for our kids. But if you're born in the 1990s in this country, you're down to a 50-50 shot and it's declining fast. That's why the parents feel the way that we do. That's why our young people feel like they have the deck stacked against them in ways that the previous generations did not. It's all true, Boone. It's all in the numbers. So how do we fix it? If you're here today, you know my flagship proposal is to give every kid $1,000 a month starting at age 18 until the day you die. Raise your hand if you knew that. Keep your hand up if you think that's too good to be true. In one event, literally no one moved. Like the entire hand, I was like, wow. I understand it. I get it. But Boone, this is not my idea and it's not a new idea. Thomas Paine was for this at the founding of our country, called it the citizen's dividend, all Americans. Martin Luther King, whose birthday we celebrated just last week, was fighting for this when he was killed in '98, the guaranteed minimum income for all Americans. I had the privilege of sitting with Dr. King's son in Atlanta, where he told me this is what his father was fighting for. 1,000 economists, including Milton Friedman, one of the forefathers of modern economic thought, endorsed this plan in the 60s. It was so mainstream it passed the US House of Representatives twice in 1971 under Richard Nixon, the Family Assistance Plan. And then 11 years later, one state actually passed a dividend, where now everyone in that state gets between $1,000 and $2,000 a year, no questions asked. And what state is that? Alaska. And how does Alaska pay for it? Oil. And what is the oil of the 21st century?
Technology.
Data, technology, AI, self-driving cars and trucks. A study just came out recently that said that our data, your data, is now worth more than oil. Hand if you saw that study. Keep your hand up if you got your data check in the mail last month. And companies that are paying nothing or next to nothing back into our country. This is Boone. We must reach out, get this value that is leaving your communities, that's getting essentially made $1 a month for everyone here. Particularly because after this money is in your hands, where will it go? How much of it would stay right here in Iowa? Most of it. Not all of it. You might get your own Netflix password. But most of it would go to car repairs you've been putting off, and daycares, and Little League signups, and more Mexican food, and Democratic Party dues, and religious organizations. Boom, this is the trickle-up economy. People, our families, and our communities up. This would give our kids a secure future. We could actually look them in the eye and say, your country loves you, values you, and your country will invest in you and your future. This should have been done decades. This is why the imbalances are so severe between us and our families and the big companies and the rural community, the cause of all of our problems. And Democrats, to me, are making a mistake like he is. Donald Trump is a symptom of the disease that has been up for years and decades. And Boone, it is up to us to start curing this disease starting on Monday night. And I'm just the Asian doctor for the job. So in this context, this $1,000 a month dividend is not just necessary, vital, because it's going to rebalance the most extreme winner-take-all economy in the history of the world right before it gets prices in my community, in my life. And once again, you are right. Corporate profits are at record highs in America right now. What else are at record highs? Suicides, credit card debt and bank gun violence, stress, anxiety, depression, mental illness, substance abuse, drug overdoses, deficit. Record lows in the United States right now.
Move.
It's like Eeyore over there.
Record lows in the United States of America right now. Starting a business for a young person, getting married, having a child. All the things you associate with a thriving society are now at record lows in the United States right now. This is a disease that has been building up for years and years, and Iowa has been ground zero for many of these changes. It started on your farm, the mechanization and consolidation of thousands of farming jobs. Then it went to your factories, blasting away 40,000 manufacturing jobs and shuttering those towns. Now it's on your main streets, closing 30% of your stores and malls. Pretty soon it will be on your highways. You have to turn the tide, Boone. You have to rewire this economy so instead of working for the big companies, it starts working for you and yours. I know many of you feel it's your obligation to send a person of integrity and honor to the White House on behalf of the rest of the country. That is not the standard you should be using. The standard should be whether or not this person's going to try and improve your way of life and the way of your life of your family here in Boone every single day. Because if we can't do that, we should not be your president. I know on a personal level what our economic measurements are because of my own family. My wife Evelyn is at home every day with our two boys, one of whom is autistic. How much is her work valued at in our economic measurements right now? She gets a 0. How about every stay-at-home parent in the country? How about caregivers like Kyle taking care of ailing loved ones? That's a 0. Volunteers and activists, 95% of artists. One thing we don't talk about a lot, but it's crucial, how about local journalists? Almost 2,000 local newspapers have gone out of business in the United States because their advertising revenue went up to the cloud, and you can't run a paper on that. There are now 200 counties in our country that don't have a single local news source. What doesn't function very well if you do not have local news? Democracy. Because how can you vote on what's going on in your community if literally no one is covering what's going on in your community? Boone, these are the things we're supposed to value most deeply. Our kids, family, our community, our democracy, and they're getting zeroed out one by one by one. They're getting zeroed out because we have been collectively convinced that economic value and human value are the same things. That's what we have to change. We have to say to the rest of the country that we each have intrinsic value as Americans, as citizens, and as shareholders of the richest country in the history of the world. We have to let our fellow Americans know it is not our purpose to work for the economy. It is the purpose of this economy to work for us and our families. Thinking about applying to that. I am the numbers guy. I am not running for president of the United States because I dreamt about being president of the United States. Those were not the conversations in the Yang household. Growing up, my parents were not like, you're going to be president someday. They were more like, you're terrible, clean your room. I'm running for president because, like so many of you here today, I'm a parent. I have seen the future that lies ahead for our kids, and it is not something I'm willing to accept. They deserve better. We must give them better. We must fight to give them better on Monday. It's been tremendous campaigning here in Iowa over the last 19, 20 months. This is my 25th, 26th trip to the state. And you all have been really good to me, my family. My kids love it here. They made like a snowman and then stuck. They don't get to do that anymore. And then they stuck some like Yang like paraphernalia on it. We were joking that they created a voter. And when I started coming here, it was, no one had ever heard of me. There were certainly no TV commercials. It's me and like maybe one or two staffers in a rental car, and we drive to wherever people would hear me out, really. But it's thanks to the people here in Iowa that we have a chance to make change. And I love and appreciate you for it. I think there's a lot of wisdom in the fact that you all control the future of our country, and I know that you're going to take us in the right direction on Monday. What did Hillary Clinton say in response? America's already great. Remember that? It's been a long 3 years, Boone, I know. But it's now coming to an end. That answer did not go over well with many Americans because the problems in our communities are all too real. We have to acknowledge their depth and severity, but then we need solutions that will actually help move our community forward. What were Donald Trump's solutions? Build a wall, turn the challenges of this time, like climate change. We have to evolve in the way we see ourselves and our work, our value. I am the ideal candidate for this job because the opposite of Donald Trump, Asian man who likes math. Thank you all very much. What does it stand for? Make America think harder, that's right. That's your job on Monday. It's your job to move this country we love, not left, not right, but forward. And I know that's just where you will take us. Thank you, Boone. Let's fight for a future we'll actually be proud of for our kids and the next generation. Thank you.
We're going to take, everybody can stay in their seats. We're going to take some time for some questions. Everyone can sit right back down. No need to mob us over here. Thank you. Raise your hand if you have a question.
Hello, my name is Ann Bacon, and I run a nonprofit that helps low-income families in central Iowa, including Boone County.
Good for you, man.
The government says if you make $1,000 a year, you're out of poverty. So my first question is, how would you measure poverty? And the second question I have is, what happens to the programs that are currently in place that would price out of with their $1,000 a month?
Well, first, thank you for the work you do to make families and people express frustration to me all the time that the way many of our programs are designed right now is that if you make above a certain amount, then you start losing all the benefits. I had so many people say to me that that actually keeps them from doing part-time work or things that they want to do. And that's one reason why I'm so passionate about it, because it helps alleviate that incentive, because you get it and you get it. You do a part-time job on top of it, you get that too. It helps ensure that it does not eliminate your ability to access certain programs. I do want to make clear though that this dividend is universal and opt-in, but if you opt into it, you're choosing to forego certain cash and cash-like benefits from things like heating oil subsidies and things like that. When I talk to people who are on these means-tested programs, most of them say they would dramatically prefer $1,000 unconditional cash they can do whatever they want with than something they can only spend in a particular narrow way. As to how you define poverty, I mean, it depends so much upon what someone's circumstances are. I've got a special needs child, and if you know your kid needs something and you can't get it to them, then I know there's like no worse feeling in the world. And so I think you could be poor and be making over $24,000 a year if there are needs in your family that you can't meet. So that to me would be the way we should look at it, is not like just a strict dollar amount, but it's like what are the needs of your family and can you actually access them in a real way. On the other end of the spectrum, I talk to older Americans who are literally, they don't qualify as poor, but they're cutting pills in half, they're rationing drugs, they're doing all sorts of crazy stuff because they need some prescription drugs that for whatever reason are like thousands and thousands of dollars. And so that also can make one feel very, very poor very, very quickly if all of your money is getting consumed by life-saving medication that you have no choice but to pay for.
Thank you. My name is Jonathan Jackson. I'm actually from Fort Lauderdale, and that's in South Florida. It's freezing up here. But I wanted to say, first of all, that in a country that appears very anti-intellectual, every time I come to one of your rallies, I feel like I know more than what I came with. So what do you think about the state of affording housing? So in South Florida, this is totally not Boone, I'm sorry, but in South Florida, the rent is sky high. And folks can't afford their living situation. So what do you plan to do when it comes to affordable housing efforts? Oh, here too? See?
Yeah, no, it's not just a Florida problem. It's an Iowa problem, it's an everywhere problem. That we have an affordable housing crisis in a whole lot of the country. And a lot of it's because they're a combination of things. The economic incentives are for developers or pretty much anyone to try and build the nicest housing stock they can. And so you end up with gentrifying of neighborhoods. And then people are like, I can't afford this. And they're like, well, tough luck on you. And so then you end up with people getting shoved out. And then if you ask someone whether they're for affordable housing developments, everyone says yes. And then when you say, are you for an affordable housing development in your neighborhood? Then everyone says no.
No, exactly.
So that is what we have to try and alleviate. And there are some things you can do from the federal level. You can put in more housing incentives through the HUD and